What's up, Jolene?
I remember to turn off the mute.
Hey,
Manchester
wait,
United.
what you got on? What's your logo say?
This is Manchester United, okay? And on the
Okay,
back, it says Jolene GC.
mine. I'm not gonna tell you what mine says. How are you? How are you? I hope you're doing well.
I am, but it is super hot in Seattle right now.
It's only 79 degrees.
It feels so hot, like blazing saddles. Maybe it's just hot up in here. I need to turn the AC on or something, but it is, it's hot. How's it? How are you doing? What's going
I'm
on?
doing good. I'm doing good. It's been a very interesting set of days. We've had a few announcements and everything else, but without further ado, let's just go ahead and what's up, everybody? I'm Mark Monroe, accompanied by my wonderful co-host, co-creator, co-producer, and all things galactic. Give it up for none other than the wonderful.
It's Jolene GC in the place to be. What does the Cousins on the Spine Tuesday? As you can see, we started early.
Yes, we did. And without further ado, go ahead and cue that intro for us, please. All right, all right, all right. We got a lot to get into today. We got a heavy discussion. We got to talk about some new tech, some new software, and then we got to talk about the behavior. So, if you remember what I said last time that we were live, because unfortunately we weren't here last week. So you got to think back 2 weeks where we were talking about consumer engineering. And so this week we're going to be talking about the behaviors in which that we look at. And there's 5 factors that we want you to really think about. And I just turned on my AI, so I'm going to raise my hand again so that way, and I promise I will not do 5 again. But we got a lot to get into, Jolene. So without further ado, let's just get some of the obvious stuff out of the way. Who was first in the chat today? Let's go. We got none other than Uncle Charles in the building. What's good, Unc? Thank you for dropping by and having your notification bell on. We salute you. And if you want to be saluted in the chat, then go ahead and have your notification bell turned on. So that way, whenever we drop a video, and now you know the new time is at 5. We're live at 5. So there you have it. We'll salute you if you're first. So thank you, Uncle Charles. Thank you so much. And on top of that, if you like the videos that we do, if you love the education of what we bring here at the Come Up series, it's a collective effort. So you got myself and Jolene on Tuesdays, you got Lawrence and Tiara on Mondays, and then of course you got Abby and Chris on Wednesdays, and then of course to top it off, you got Mo and Mark also on Thursdays. So we got a full lineup, and of course more things are coming. So relax, people. Maybe we got to even get a cooking show going. You never know. All right. So, hey, look, I can eat. All right. So, today, let's get into it. So be sure to like the video and of course, subscribe. So if you're a new subscriber, welcome. If you've been here for a while, what's good, OGs? All right. So we got a lot to break into. So where should we start first? Should we start with the news that transpired?
Yeah, let's get into some news, and that will kind of set the context.
I think it would. Great thinking, great thinking. And be sure to share this video on social if you'd like to. Share it with 5 people since we're doing 5 factors. So share it with 5 friends. And so, wow, I got to keep the hands down. Oh, this AI. How many times will I get caught up on this one? Somebody keep the timer going or keep the counter going. Yeah, so that's 2. Hopefully I don't strike out. All right, so check it out. So Apple this week literally just, they normally had their developers conference, typically the first or second week of June. And it's typically all about software that's ultimately going to impact its hardware that they normally announce later on in the year. Normally all things lead up towards the iPhone release in September or October. And so developers and everybody else in the world have been like, we need something new. It's getting a little
Stale.
familiar. It's getting a little familiar in the room. So, Apple came forth and was like, okay, we could drop a little something new on you. And it's not like, we haven't seen a mixed reality device, HoloLens, or virtual reality device with Meta and their Quests. And, Apple just said, you know what? I just think that we can do a little better.
Well, that's what Apple does, Mark. Another company comes out with something and they look at it, observe it, and they're just like,
Girl.
that was cute. That was cute.
It like for real. Like Apple was just like the person sitting inside while everybody was just like, okay, that's nice. All right. And then they show up and it's just like, look, I don't even want to be in this club anymore. Like
I love Apple though.
Real talk though, yesterday it had me looking back at my Oculus over there like,
I know. I know it did.
I honestly felt a little hurt. I ain't gonna lie. I felt a little bit hurt. But I was just like, all for the sake of innovation. Everybody wins. So that's
isn't the Oculus like 10%? Is it is the Oculus $349 or is it $549?
Well, now it's $299. So
okay. Well,
and then the new one is going to be $499.
Okay.
Which allows you to they don't get me wrong, Oculus or Meta made some huge improvements on their next iteration of their device. So we have to definitely give them, honorable mention. But like Apple just said, you know what? Listen, your people wanted 4K, so we gave them 4K in both eyes. And then on top of that, they said, look, listen, if you don't want to go to the movie theater, we got you. Go ahead and give yourself a 100-inch screen on us all day.
It's Apple TV. I'm about to watch Ted Lasso.
and Apple learned from all those memes and all those fail videos of people doing those Oculus videos and then people jumping into the screen and cracking their screens, their TVs. Look, they learned. They just said, hey, if your dog or if a person walks in your space so that way you don't accidentally hit them and everything else, look, we got you. We will immediately let you see what's happening in your surroundings. What else did they do? Man.
The eyes, Mark. I thought that
listen, the eye tracking.
Well, eye tracking plus like the fact that if someone looks
it can fix vision.
Yeah, you can see their eyes so you know what they're, looking at.
Look, it's a whole lot of, but I'm just going to say this, like, now there was one little thing, though that there was one more thing, but there was that one little thing that literally like just set a bomb in the tech community, also within the consumer community, which really is going to play suit to the conversation that we're going to talk about today, which is, I mean, it's a dope device, but then people are like, but for the $3,500 though,
that price tag,
that price tag, that's like, that's like a Super Bowl. That's like a Super Bowl seat right there, or NBA final seat. But, honestly, it's like, you have to ask yourself, like, okay, Meta has now defined its market on a somewhat mid to, let's say, normal tier, as well as even a lower tier. But then Apple just said, okay, hey, we're going to set the bar here at the high tier. And normally what we see with Apple is they always start off high. And then as they start to fix things, you start to see those price points come down. So I'm not surprised that we started off on the high note. And I think that we're going to come down to about a base, which is, in the grand scheme of things, we'll probably see Apple come down to about $500, $600 for a device. But,
the shock mark when the price dropped, they're like, the price up, and everyone's like,
right? Like you could hear a pin drop. Like somebody recorded what was happening during that event. And it was just like,
who are they talking to?
Look, listen, I got so many people talking about, you still gonna buy it? And I was like, I don't know. We'll see. But they're ultimately going after a market that competes with, like, if you think about it, they mentioned at their conference that, hey, if you buy a TV, a high level TV, as well as a sound system, it still won't compare to what you get for, the Vision Pro. Now, that's interesting. And then they now define the Pro series. So I wonder what the Vision,
Mhm.
if that's Pro, then do we get Vision Plus? Do we get Vision, what are we
I mean,
getting?
I think we will, but honestly, Mark, I'm waiting for that, family bundle because they're always trying to package all these things together for all their, software and services on the App Store. So what's up with the family bundle? Could we get a four
Yeah.
for, you know?
Listen, I have no idea about that. You're gonna have to talk to the powers that be over there in Cupertino. But
Let's
all I
get
know is,
a
and so for the folks over there that are like, okay, hey, well, Mark, what also happens to the stock? So normally what happens every single WWDC, so that way you can
bundle.
just set your clocks for next year. But normally when Apple does a WWDC, there's a lot of hype that goes into WWDC because the developer community is like very much so adamant about building applications on Apple's ecosystem. And honestly, it's a day traded stock. Apple becomes a day traded stock that day, so you'll see it up for X amount of time, and then as we start getting into the wee hours, into the late session of the keynote, that's when you normally start to see that the stock typically sells off or trades off, and essentially it doesn't normally sustain that massive lead that it had for the day. So there was a lot of emphasis in the top, but normally it's like you're going to probably play, if you're a trader, 9 times out of 10 you're going to probably play a put on Apple on the day of its announcement. So, just a little bit tidbit there. But then after a while, like people go back and they consume and they kind of chew around with the numbers and get an idea. Then that's where we start to see that Apple probably updates everything from that perspective. So, if you're at home sitting back and asking yourself, like, okay, hey, well, what's going on? Is Apple in trouble? I don't think so. Is the Vision Pro goggles built into the stock? That's the question now that we have to that I guess we're going to figure out over X amount of time. So, all right. So that's it for Apple.
Yeah.
Um, but let's talk a little bit about consumer behavior, shall we?
Yeah.
So, a lot of times we talk about like, a business model, we talk about the overall economics of things. But many times what we don't end up talking about is we don't really talk about the actual like consumer. Like, what is it that they want? What is it, what is that they're thinking, or what are the fundamentals behind even constructing a consumer? Now, companies, they do this very, very well as it pertains to creating consumer personas or customer personas, where they can literally create narratives that surround each and every single one of those personas. So it kind of gives them an idea as it pertains to targeting who their general consumer is, and knowing those behaviors really like lets you know exactly how well a company knows its customer. But as consumers, you should also share in this knowledge too. So there's going to be some things that I want you guys to discuss, and I did this on purpose, not to put together a presentation, because I honestly wanted everybody who's watching underneath the sound of our voice, I really want you to take notes. And trust and believe there's a method behind our madness, but we're kicking it a little bit old school today, which means that no visual aids on this episode. You're going to have to listen and take notes. Shout outs to Levic, who's our wonderful producer, because he will definitely do a good job if he sees anything that's beneficial or a certain point of reference. He may put it in the chat for y'all. So let's get into it. So the first thing that we look at as it pertains to consumer behavior is, first things first, Jolene, what is consumer behavior? How does one define consumer behavior? Do you have an idea for it?
Yeah, sure. Consumer behavior. It is I'm going to say that it's a study, because
Mhm,
folks study it. So the study of how, or actually, no, the study of like what drives consumers
mhm.
to purchase
Yep,
a
yep,
product, good, or service.
yep. That is correct. So there's some factors here that we look at. So one of them is, since we're all about it here at the Come Up series, we can't speak on behalf of everybody else, but we only know us. Culture. Culture definitely matters. Culture shapes our beliefs, it
Hmm.
shapes our values, our customs, our behaviors, all of that. And it's like it's a diverse group of, like, when you think about a diverse group of people, it can have different cultural backgrounds that influence their buying decisions.
It also,
So
can I
go
add
ahead,
something
go
to
ahead.
that?
Yeah, go ahead.
The and also culture defines like what's cool, as evidenced
Indeed.
by Black folks on the internet.
Indeed, 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 indeed. I couldn't have said it any better. So there's some things in which that we look at just for, I'm going to keep it simple for you guys in the sense of 3 points when I try to go through each and every single one of them. But of course we can speak even higher on them if it's necessary. But when we think about cultural, like, factors in consumer behavior, it really comes down to three main things. It comes down to the culture, the subculture, and social class. Those are the three things that really define, when we look at consumer behavior. Now, of course, cultures share a set of values, perceptions, and all that other stuff, like wants, behaviors. Those are the things that are learned by, by a certain member of society, right? Then there's a subculture, which is the groups within a culture that have their own distinct, like, their distinct modes of behavior. So how is it that they move? How is it that they speak? How is it that they dress? Honestly, how is it that they live their day-to-day life? So what does that look like, right? So let's take, say, for example, a person from Brooklyn. Do you think that a person that grew up in Brooklyn acts exactly the same, or lives, or like has the same type of modes of behavior as a person who, let's say, lives in, let's say, Bellevue, Washington?
No, absolutely not.
Because there's going to be so many distinct differences that take place within that background, within that area, that ultimately helps shapes that entire landscape. Now, of course, we missed one of those things, right? There's also this thing called social class, which is a hierarchical division. So it's kind of like, think about it like in the sense of the haves and the have-nots, right? So you have your high social class, you have your median social class, which is considered like, your middle class, and then of course you have what is considered your lower tier class, or AKA low class. And a lot of times those are distinguished upon many different various factors. A lot of times that we look at them for is many times when we define it as it pertains to monetary value. So, for example, high earners, high class, average earners, middle class. And then, of course, low earners, we look at that as low class. Now, whether or not that's, something that we should really define people of, that's a whole different, set of can of worms. But essentially, those are just the very near basics in which that we look at. So I guess today I'm going to like use some simple examples. Is that okay, Jolene?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's look at, like, for example, throughout today's conversation, let's look at either one company or two companies. And since Apple's on our peer review right now, especially since they launched a $3,500 pair of goggles. By the way, I wonder if you drop and break those, I wonder what that looks like as it pertains to like that replacement plan. But that Apple Care is, look, okay, whole nother
Mandatory.
conversation.
Mandatory.
All right. So let's look at Apple, and then let's look at Tesla. Yeah, I think that they can definitely define it for us. So when we look at Tesla, they place high, it's a high value placed on sustainability and innovation in let's say Western culture, right? And then when we look at Apple, we look at it as an emphasis. They really emphasize their products on individualism and high status culture in many societies.
Mm-hmm.
So where, say, for example, for a long period of time, an iPhone was always a sense of iconography. Like, one of the interesting things that I was watching a comedian the other day, and he was like, yo, iPhone owners are some of the most discriminatory people ever. Because the moment that they see a green bubble in the chat, it's the worst form of discrimination
It
that you
is.
will ever face. Um, which is a whole nother conversation, but it kind of like points to the part as it pertains to what is it that the iPhone started out as, and hence the reason why they could have easily, like, literally made the upgrade so that way essentially now Android is more than capable to communicate with iMessage without having to give you the green bubble. It could actually report back a blue bubble. And a lot of those issues have like literally been resolved. But the thing is, Apple just says, nope, we're going to keep this very individual. So if you're in the iPhone ecosystem, you are in the iPhone ecosystem. If you are in Android, you are still in Android. So, those things kind of remain tried and true when we think about it. Now, of course, it leads us into our next thing of a factor, which is social, right? So social factor is the other part, which if we break it into a few groups, but it's pretty much the influences that come from an individual social environment. So, like for example, how things play out within your social environment are the social factors in which that we look at as it pertains to the consumer behavior in which that we could potentially define of what is it that a person would ultimately buy. So, what does that look like? Well, I'll give the 3 bullet points first, and then we'll talk about like some examples. So the first one is reference groups. I think everybody knows about this one, right? A reference group. So pretty much the influences from groups that provide a frame of reference of individuals. I mean,
come up, cousins.
yeah, there you go. And then there's family. So consumer behavior influenced by family members. So for example, if your grandmother always told you that, nah, you don't buy that, when you grow up as an adult, you're like, yeah, we don't buy that. We don't eat that. And then on top of that, we talk about another social factor, which is considered roles and status, the position of an individual within a group influencing a purchasing behavior. So, for example, if a role and factor in a relationship is the fact that, okay, hey, a person grew up where the father made all the financial decisions as it pertains to consumer purchases, then those are the types of things for the children as it gets passed on, they could possibly have impact on their consumer behavior as it pertains to future purchases. So let's look at it in the sense of, let's bring it back to Tesla and Apple, shall we?
Yeah.
So when we look at Tesla, its influence is of environmental and tech enthusiast groups. So if you normally look at most of the folks who are the consistent buyers of Tesla, they're very much so focused on environment. And if they don't care about the environment as much, they're probably like, okay, it's the tech. It's definitely the tech, like the innovation in which that they bring, the ecosystem and the infrastructure. And then, of course, then it's going to come down to like things like, say, for example, price, right? So those are the things that can impact, say, for example, a Tesla shopper as it pertains to like consumer behavior, like when we think about it. Now, when we look at Apple, influence of family and peer preferences, right? So, for example, 9 times out of 10, if your friends that you surround yourself with are all iPhone users, what is the chance that you're going to be an iPhone user?
I mean, it's going to be high if you want to be a part of the group chat.
Exactly. So it's just like we said, a status symbol in certain social circles. So, and I made some notes when it came to some of these things. So I'll read them out for folks just as a heads up. So when we look at social factors and everything else, and roles and status, let's break it down a little bit for reference groups. So reference groups provide a frame of reference, as I said, for decisions. So for instance, Tesla benefits significantly from the influence of environmental groups and tech enthusiasts who advocate for their innovative, sustainable technology. So like I had said before, when we look at, say, for example, when it comes to family, family preferences often drive the purchase of Apple products. So creating a ripple effect where one family member's positive experiences with the brand influence other members to become customers. And then when we think about roles and status within a group, for instance, owning a Tesla vehicle or an Apple product often implies a certain level of social status, which can be a significant driving factor for some consumers. So what does that look like? If you see, let's say, for example, let's remove Tesla and Apple out of the way, right? Let's just do a social experiment. If you see let's say, a black man driving, let's say, a Rolls Royce,
okay,
what is going to be the first thing that comes to your mind?
He got money.
Now, let's flip it. Let's flip it. If you see a black man driving a Toyota Camry or a Toyota Corolla, what are you going to think?
I'm not going to think anything.
You're probably going to think that he's more conscious. You're probably going to think that he's very economical as it pertains to his purchases. Well, because the Toyota Camry is it's one of the most efficient, economical cars.
But what year are we talking?
We're not talking. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Now, if we're talking about the pandemic, business folks out here driving Rolls Royces and everything else, that's a whole different type of scenario,
Yeah,
we may have to
we just had
rethink.
a
We
few.
have to rethink what that consumer behavior and what those factors are that go into the landscape. All right, so then let's look at the things like, for example, personal. So of course, so we just went through culture plays a role, and then we said social plays a role. But
Yep.
then there are also other things where we look at as it pertains to just personal.
Okay.
Now, there's a few items here within this space that we have to look at. So it's more than three. So, like again, I hope that each and every single one of you are taking notes, because don't worry, we're gonna bring it all home for you at the end. So when we think about like personal factors, right? These are influences that derive from an individual's specific characteristics. So who you are as a person, your characteristics and qualities greatly have impact as it pertains to how is it that you make consumer decisions. Now, what are some of those personal factors, one might ask? Well, one of them is age and life cycle stage. So, for example, if I'm young, I'm more inclined to maybe want to go ride a motorcycle. If I'm having a midlife crisis, I'll probably want to go buy a motorcycle or something like that. Now, as I'm at the later stages in my life and I'm more so in preservation and everything else, my risk tolerance is probably not going to be as high. It's kind of like the same thing when we look at like behaviors, even investing, right? When
Hmm.
you're young, you're focused more so towards growth. You're able to take on a higher risk appetite versus when you get older, you focus on things more so in the sense of income. So income really matters and preservation of capital. So a consumer needs and wants their needs and wants change with life and age, stage. So that's very simple.
Hmm.
Now let's think about it as it pertains to occupation. Career influence consumer it can influence a consumer's purchasing decision. So, for example, if I work on Wall Street, or if I work at a law firm and everybody's wearing, great suits, am I going to be the person that just shows up in a slack and a button up with, a simple tie?
Not if you compete.
Probably not. I'm probably going to my decisions as it pertains to consumer behavior decisions are going to be highly impacted based upon the folks around me, and then also what my job is,
Mhm.
because of the fact that it's a reflection of who I am. Like we said, personal. So then we said, okay, economic situation. Like we always look at the thing, economic situation. And I think that that's one of the ones that everybody tends to just pay attention to, which points towards personal. Consumers' financial status affects buying behavior, right? So, for example, if you ain't got it like that, then you ain't got it. And if you got it, then you have the option to do so. But then, it kind of like boils down to the question of, should you or should you not? And then lifestyle, individuals' mode of living as reflected in activities, interests, and opinions. So if I'm more conservative, then my consumer behavior will probably reflect more conservative. We've seen this also within the fashion industry, where they look at certain types of individuals, whether it's conservative, liberal, or anything in between. They can actually assign specific color palettes based upon those types of things as it
That
pertains to
makes sense.
their lifestyle. So if you're conservative, they probably look at neutral colors, things that don't stand out. If you're more of a liberal type of person, then you wear more bolder colors, things in which that pop. So those are the types of things. And like I said, it comes down to a bit of a science. So when we look at the other part that follows that is personality and self-concept. So that's the consumer's unique psychological characteristics that influence their behavior. So and don't worry, we'll get to that. So to bring it back to like, as a simple example, when we look at like the Teslas and the Apples of the world. So Tesla appeals to individuals with a lifestyle favoring sustainability and tech innovation. And Apple, the consumer, is popular. It's popular among age groups and professionals due to its versatile product range. So if you notice, over time, it started making it available for everybody. But look at the language in which that you see within there. When you go back and watch some of the commercials, now after you've seen today's episode, you'll kind of start to put it into perspective as it pertains to who is the consumer in whom which that they're really targeting within these commercials. All right, so let's go on to let's before we do that, Jolyn, did I miss anything?
Um, no, I think you
Okay.
covered everything for that.
Sweet. All right. So this one is the one where it gets even further. And like, a lot of times we're going to probably start seeing more and more of this, especially as we start looking at things like AI, you know, psychological, a lot of psych analysts, a lot
Mhm.
of, looking at like various different factors and everything else. And it can boil down to a certain set of things. So when we look at psychological factors, it involves the individual's response to a marketing message based on the perceptions, attitudes, learning, and motivation, right? So, for example, how many times have you ever seen a commercial and you felt inspired? Or how many times have you seen a commercial and you were angry? You were just like completely disgusted. Those are based upon psychological things and psychological factors in which that literally cause you to have that type of reaction. So,
Emotion
w-
based.
exactly. So, what are some of those factors that play in when we think about psychological factors? Well, one is motivation. So, motivation is the drive that leads consumers to buy products or services. So, if I really see something that really falls within my wheelhouse, I'm going to be highly motivated to do so. If I see a motivational, if I see something that's motivating me to go out there and play a sport, then I'm going to feel highly motivated to do so. Now, there's another thing that goes alongside with that is also perception. So, how the consumer perceives themselves and the world around them. So, and especially as we as Black consumers, like this is very heavy when you think about how is it that brands or services really target the culture as it pertains to like, okay, hey, like they focus on what could be or what you could build or what this could be for your family in the future. And of course, they play onto your heartstrings because of the fact that you really, really want those things. But again, it's major part because of the fact that it's really embedded into your perception of what is it that you want to do with your life or where is it that you would like to see your life going. And then on top of that, hearing the messaging that motivates you and plays towards those strengths, which therein turns into another thing, learning, right? Like
Mhm.
learning is a major part of psychological. So when we think about that, it's like it's the experiences and acquired information influencing your consumer behavior decisions. So, I'll get to that in a second because of the fact that these two topics are kind of like tied to these two factors are kind of like tied to each other. So the learning and then the beliefs and attitudes. They're very closely tied because it's a preconceived notion and mindset that shapes a consumer's behavior.
Now, Mark, with
Yeah.
motivation, interesting about motivation, motivation seems like it's external, where when we think about inspiration, so if you saw a commercial that was motivational, that motivation may last X amount of time. But if something
Yep.
is inspirational, it has a deeper impact on you,
Yep.
because in some way, shape, or form, that ad or whatever commercial, or what have you, was able to tap into like an individual's values, and
Yep.
those values can cause the impact to feel more like inspiration that usually stays longer with you. So if we look at Apple and we look at Tesla, Apple seems more on the motivational side. It's an external factor, some of those factors you talked about, like social and all that. But Tesla, their message with environmental sustainability, that's more inspirational.
Yep.
And so
You nailed it at right on the head. Right on the head.
it's just
Okay.
interesting
So
psychologically.
it's highly interesting, right? Because like for example, when we think about it, right? Have you ever noticed that you see more Mother's Day commercials than you see Father's Day commercials?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Well, why do you think that though? What like why do we see more of those commercials than we see Father's Day commercials?
Because everyone is more motivated, inspired, to celebrate their mom. And if you just look at it, well, it's interesting too, Mark, because yes, there's more, commercials for your mom and Mother's Day and stuff like that. But then when we think about just like patriarchy as a whole, mothers are not up there, or women
Is
are
women are
not.
yeah yeah yeah. So but you see what I'm saying? Like it's
Mhm.
kind of like that influence of what we look at as it pertains to consumer behavior because here we are it's like we're championing this but yet we don't still hold it to that higher value in which that where it should be in that patriarchal that
Mhm.
order. So interesting. So which leads us to our next factor. I got situations out here.
Oh
It's
Lord,
very situational.
I cannot.
It's very situational. All right, somebody asks, can playing on fears of people also be considered motivation to take action? Very much so.
Yeah,
Very
urgency.
much so. Sense of urgency and everything else, like I had just mentioned. There's so many different things. Like, it could be like also your perception of things, your belief and your attitude of things that also play a role to motivate you. But here's the thing that well, I'm trying not to give it away. I'm really trying not to give it away. I'm hoping that somebody's going to catch it before we reach the end. Let's see if they can catch it, like, because you know okay. All right. So situational
Okay.
refers to a set of circumstances or conditions that affect a consumer's purchase decisions at any given moment, right? So it's broken into a few things, like, for example, physical surroundings, influence of environment and consumers' behavioral decisions, right? When we think about social surroundings, influence of people. When we think about time, all right, how much time a consumer has can affect their buying decision. So, for example, impulse buy versus, hey, I put it in my cart, but I haven't bought it. The chances that I'll actually buy it. There's this rule that I kind of grew up on, that whenever I wanted something, my grandfather would just literally say, "All right, let's wait 2 days, and if it still is on your mind, we'll come back and buy it."
Dang, 2 days? That's not bad.
Look, but the funny thing is, it's like, just imagine all the things that are filling up that space within my days,
Mm-hmm.
to be like, oh, well, I can easily just, like, lose sight of it. And sometimes he would just do like a subtle question that I just wasn't even paying attention to. And he'd be like, it's not on his mind. We don't have to go buy it. And then it would come back maybe on the third day, be like, and then it's like, okay, hey, time expired.
That's a cool one.
And so it's just like, hey, it's like, time plays a major role in our decision making process. I'm just trying to tell you. And then, of course, purchase reason. The reason behind a purchase can influence a consumer's behavior. So, for example, think about all those folks that are feeling sad, and then they go run to the mall, they go run to the store to go buy a bunch of stuff. Like, think about all of the people out there that go up and buy a bunch of stuff that they don't need, and then it's like, okay, hey, it's there, but it's like, the feelings and everything else haven't gone anywhere. And then on the flip side, it's like, the people in whom which that bought things for purchase reason, because of the fact it's sense of its utility, the fact that it's a part of it becomes a part of my everyday life, something that is a conduit for me to be able to achieve X, those types of things. So we start to apply reason to the things in which that we purchase. Like, if you ever ask a person why did they purchase it,
Mm-hmm.
like, just try it. Now, of course, don't do it all the time. So I know that there may be some guys out there that be like, all right, I'm gonna try it. Look, if you end up catching some smoke and everything else, you need to know who you're talking to. I'm just gonna let you know this. But it's like, if it's a cool, calm, collected setting, and if you're able to do this, just ask a person, hey, why did you purchase that?
And see what they say. But
Sometimes I ask my friends, why did they make like expensive purchases? Like, hey, why did you buy that? What was the reasoning behind buying it?
but Mark, I feel like if you ask that question to someone, I feel like then they would immediately be self-conscious about the purchase, just because of the space that you're in. Um,
Exactly.
so don't ask me no questions.
Look, if you want zero problems, like I said, just be cognizant of who your audience is that you're going to be asking this question. Because again, it's situational. So if it's situational, then look. All right. So then, which brings me down to one of our final, factors here, right? And that's called influence. It's just simple influence. And
Okay.
so when we think about influence, it's just, how is it that we understand things? So how understanding these factors guides marketing and product design. So remember where I talked about consumer engineering?
Mm-hmm.
Influence plays a huge role into that. Like, because the influence literally helps us define, how a product is designed. Like, think about it like this. And I promise you guys, I was going to tie it all together. So here it is. So look at Apple's Vision Pro headset, right?
Mm-hmm.
how many different products, how many different former products did you see that had a major influence on those Vision Pro goggles?
There was a lot. I mean, if we're talking about like every single derivative product, or we're just talking about actual like hardware.
We're just talking about the hardware right now, but we can also talk about software, but we can also mention software as well. But I'm going to throw up an image on the screen so that way
Mhm.
we can all just like look at it. And, we're going to all take a look at it. And I want you to kind of like get an idea or get an idea of, okay, hey, well, what kind of product are we looking at? So let's see here, save image. I know I'm kind of like lightweight stealing, but let's see here. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to host this up and be like, all right, well, yeah, I'm gonna just share it. And so I'm gonna just put it up as an overlay over us. So here's the overlay that we have for the Vision Pros.
Mhm.
All right, what other products do you see within this product?
I mean, okay, so right off the bat, I see like just regular goggles. Like I see like ski goggles.
Okay.
One. And then any other type of goggle. Um,
So you want me to make it a little bit easier for you?
yeah.
All right, so this is what I'll do. I'll remove the overlay and we'll just go directly to Apple's website. So we're going to go directly to Apple's website
And see
and
their phones and everything.
yep. Well, we're not even going to look at the phone yet. So we're just going to look at the product itself. So this is just the product itself. And this is where it really comes into play for folks to like literally, kind of like look at. So we're just scrolling through their actual site, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's get to the part where we could say, all right, so we're getting past a lot of okay, here we go. So let's take a closer look at the Vision Pro because I think that this will kind of like, put it into perspective for everybody, as we go through this. If it ever decides that lets you know that everybody's on this website.
Oh, dang
So
it is. Well, it started to pick up some speed.
I know, right? I wonder what engine are they running? I wonder if they're running like a Unreal Engine or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember the Apple Glass?
Yeah, it's like, is their site not loading? Did we find a bug live?
Oh Lord. Come on, Apple. Let me call
Oh
Tim real
wow.
quick. Let me text Tim.
Yo, I think I need to text him and be like, look, what's good, bro? All right. So if it doesn't load, that's okay. I mean,
It's
we'll
not
find
loading.
another way. I don't think it's gonna be loading.
Tim was like, no.
Tim is like, yo, we are not having it today. All right. Well, let's see here.
I like how it's very sleek.
It's a lot of I will say this is a very heavy duty. Okay, there we go.
Sound.
So tell me what you see as it pertains to product. There we go. Do you
Is that
notice
the Apple?
anything?
That looks like an Apple Watch on the side.
Exactly. So now you're starting to see there's Apple Watch.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice any other features?
The headphone, maybe? Oh, this
Yep.
side looks like the side of the phone, kind of.
Yep.
This bottom part, the little gray mesh piece reminds me of like the headphones.
The AirBuds Pro or
Right.
the AirBuds Max.
I see the watch band on the side, the white piece that looks like a watch. It looks like an Apple Watch band.
Yep. So things in which that like, that they've incorporated as far as design.
Okay, sustainability, recyclability. I see.
So the reason why I say this though,
Mhm.
the reason why I put this out here is because you know when we look at the impacts of what something has, when we think about like design and everything else, right? Those things have had major guiding factors when we talk about the marketing of a product. So it's not so hard for people to fall in love with this device because of the fact that they recycled a lot of the material design from previous products that people love so much that they had a strong connection to. So, for example, for folks in whom which that use the watch, the design elements from the watch, the
Mhm.
design elements from the AirPods, the design elements from iPhone, and the when you look at the software, some of the feature sets that you see from using within iOS and everything else, those are the things that have had major influence on, say, for example, again, you know, what they just released, making it easier to release a product.
Well, making it easier to release a product, but also that um the bottom line, the margins. We need to talk about what those margins would be on that 3,500. Like I would
I'm
want to know that.
I'm probably guessing anywhere from 30 to 60% is the profit margin. All right, so I'm probably sure that nobody probably picked up on this because of the fact that nobody said anything in the chat, and I was kind of watching the chat as we were going along.
Mm-hmm.
But notice this: in order for any consumer behavior to transpire, you need all of those all of those things transpire all at once.
Mm.
So think about it. They're all firing off all at once. So let me run it back for you. I'll run it back for you. So, for example, if I think about situational factors, if I think about it, am I going to wear these goggles outside? No, because of the fact that depending on where my environment is and where is it that I live, it may not be the most opportune advantage for me because of the fact that I may run into the potential of them either possibly being stolen, broken, or whatever it may be. Or if I live in a place of nowhere, then it's just like, hey, it's possible, but hey, there it is. Social surroundings, who surrounds me, like the time in which that it's time for me to buy. Do I have the time to make such a purchase? Will I be spending that much time using this product? The reason for why is that I need to purchase this product. Like those are all the things that really transpire. And then on top of that, when I look at, say, for example, the psychological factors, what's my motivation for buying this product? What's my perception of what is it that I see about this product? What am I going to, what have I learned about this product? But then also, is there anything else that I'm possibly going to learn in the process? Now, what I'm going to learn in the process that may not factor in, but what I currently know about the product will definitely have a decision on my consumer behavior. And then on top of that, what is it that I believe? What is it that my current attitude is about the product or the company, right? Because if I believe that the head of the company is a straight up terrible person, that's going to have an impact as it pertains to me wanting to buy their product. And then which leads me to the other factors of personal, like, where I am in my life cycle right now. Can I, is this something that I need right now, or is this something that's going to bring value to me right now? Does my occupation suit it? My current economic situation, can I afford it? My lifestyle, does it fit the lifestyle that I currently live? Am I a tech enthusiast or am I not? Personality and self-concept of, how is it that, ultimately these things have their factors. What does that play for me as it pertains to, does this really fit my personality or does it not? Or is this like me like taking a stretch to go outside the box? When I think about social, it's like, okay, hey, well, the reference groups, what does my family think about this? Or, would my family think that this is cool, or will my family think that this is straight up cornball? The roles and status as it pertains to what it brings to my life as of purchasing a product. When I think about, like, for example, the cultural side about it, like, what is like, do I see like, this is something that, kind of like fits my culture of having impact of me owning this product? When I think about the subgroups, like the friends that I hang around, or like the people that surround me, am I going to set a precedent of them getting to know these things? And then on top of that, what type of social class does this make? What social class does this put me in? Notice how I just asked all those questions, but 9 times out of 10, the person that's going to be buying those things, before they even make it to the store or before they hit the buy button, those things have already ran through
But
subconsciously like that.
mhm.
And the crazy part about it is companies know it. They've engineered it. So, like, think about it. Why do you think, like, when we went, and I told y'all, I try to warn y'all, consumer engineering, if y'all were paying attention, then you're going to see that how it all comes into play. For me, it's like, okay, hey, I know that it's manufactured by a company that I trust, and I love the appearance, but also I love the functionality. Now, did they skip on any of these three things? Like, it's kind of like that question of the three, right? Okay, would you like something fast? Would you like it cheap, or do you want it to be done good? And if you only can select the two out of the three, then you're gonna probably give up. You're gonna sacrifice within one of those areas. Like, companies know this, and they kind of have it down to a science because of all the data in which that it learns. How does it learn? Every single thing that, like, everybody's writing on Twitter right now. You don't think that Apple's not aggregating that data to learn?
No, they're
The conversation, they're
yeah.
probably generating a consensus from their consumer like reports, or from consumer analysis. Hey, this 3500 was trending, for 3500 was trending on Twitter, and it
Mhm.
wasn't very positive. You don't think that Apple's not going to pay attention to that? Now, will that impact their pricing, or do they believe that essentially that, okay, hey, you know, it's not for everybody, but then they're still going to want it because of the fact of what it looks like and how it's manufactured and what its functionality is. And somewhere, somebody that may not be able to afford $3,500 is going to want to purchase such a product, though.
Mhm.
They're going to be inspired. They're going to be motivated. When you think about every single Super Bowl commercial, yeah, they focus on funny, but yet at the same token, notice at the same token the psychological part to that, and many of the other different factors. Every single commercial plays off of those five factors that I had just mentioned when it comes to marketing towards the masses of people. Think about it.
Well,
And it's like somebody said it best: wait until you see somebody wear these on a plane. Wait till you see them out and about, and then that it's a good statement. Because, okay, like, for example, Jolene, how many black folks in Seattle did you know that were driving Teslas when I first got my Tesla?
you.
Okay, but now look at how many black folks we know that drive Teslas in Seattle.
Our whole gang has Tesla. Every time we meet up, it's like a Tesla convention.
Right? But it's like, somebody, like, it's like you saw somebody, and the crazy part about it is, one of my good friends' bio, he was the person that I first saw that had his Tesla, and then the moment that I took it for a test drive, it was game over. Like, it was like, all right, it made sense. Like, and for people to understand, like, those consumer behaviors, they happen that quickly. You
Yeah.
know, they really, really do. So, it's kind of like when we look at, like, for example, how is it that a lot of the alcoholic beverages, how did Hennessy become so popular within the black community?
What
How
made
did how did things like jewelry, diamonds, and all these other things become so, like, famous, or become so synonymous within our culture? Who created that brand messaging? Who created that consumer behavior?
I
You
mean,
know,
we have to take it back to, like, historically, we've always been dripped in gold.
there you
Just
go.
how we do.
There you go. Now you have to look at it from the same standpoint. Now let's flip it, right?
Mhm.
Let's talk about it as it pertains to financial education. There's a lot of financial education out there, right? But it's
Mhm.
like, okay, where is the influence coming from? And from those influences, like, how are they impacting our decisions?
Well,
That's how we look at it.
I feel like there's influence, but then there's also thought leadership, which is in a whole different realm. Shout out to Regina for that, 'cause that makes a difference.
Can you say it again?
I said there's a difference between influencers, or like that whole,
Yep.
many of us need to be de-influenced, but that's a whole nother other, versus thought leadership, which is completely different. And I just said shout out to Regina for that, because she always talks about um, you're not an influencer, you're a thought leader.
There you go. All right. So I feel like we've reached the end of this as it pertains to consumer behavior. So I guess I should make the announcement of what's going to be our next frontier.
Yes. Announce.
This is, like, something that, honestly, if you stayed around and if you stuck around for what is it that I believe is the next frontier as it pertains to the next level of opportunities that I see coming down the pipeline, I look no further than ESG. So over the next, month or so, or 2 months, because it's a
Pending.
lot to cover,
Yeah.
pending time. But we're definitely going to be going through this thing called ESG. What it means as it pertains to environmental, social, and governance, and also as it pertains to how investors should be looking at ESG, how you should be looking at ESG as it pertains to not only just investing, but also as it pertains to the next generation of opportunities that are coming right down the pipeline. And I'm really, really excited about those things. And, honestly, stay tuned because I also have a few more announcements that are coming up. Probably we'll be making an announcement probably in either July or August. So just stay tuned for that. So, all right. So, if you like what you heard and if you like if you learned something, go ahead and just maybe put a yes in chat, or well, no, don't put yes in chat. Just, some type of emoji in the chat. We always like fire. Well, we like fire. So go ahead and put fire in the chat. What I want you to do as it pertains to your homework is before you make your next investment, before you make, say, for example, that next pivotal step, and this is perfect actually where we find ourselves, because I'm probably sure that we're going to see a lot of opportunities open up for people. So before you make that decision, when you're looking at things for the future, I want you to examine companies as it pertains to how is it that the consumer behavior, what is it that you portray, or what is it that you project as it pertains to consumer behavior in correlation to companies that you're interested in placing in your portfolio. Like, why do certain companies have long withstanding staying power and why do some don't? What is it that their impact is on consumer behavior? And then also, how is it that they consumer engineer things? I strongly believe that if you guys are really taking the time to utilize these tools, you'll actually find some pretty good opportunities. Like, for example, how is it that we spotted an NVIDIA or an AMD, or let's say even some of the other companies that nobody really talked about before? Because we had to look at it from the standpoint of not just their business model, but we had to reconstruct it. Most business models are constructed based upon understanding consumer behavior and how they engineer consumers. So if you understand how it's engineered and how it's constructed, and if you understand exactly how is it that how they see the behavior and how they analyze the behavior of the consumer, then you can understand exactly their business model, and then you can also see the opportunity. And once you see the opportunity, I mean, the possibilities from there are endless. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. Until next time, I'm Mark Monroe.
And I'm Jolene GC in the place to be.
And this has been Executive Education. We'll see you in the next one. Peace, y'all.